it's all that intellectualized, you know, looking for hidden meanings. You know, it's just gone crazy, that's all.
Hello, everybody. It is your good friend Countess, and I'm back with another video. This is just going to be sort of a, I don't know, I found kind of a weird connection the other night. I watched this sort of documentary about the infamous bad man, Gary Glitta. POS, in my opinion. But there was a clip in this documentary that I'm going to show you guys here in just a minute that got me got the wheels in my head going. So I kind of just wanted to know more about the city of Hamburg, Germany, and what its significance was in the 1960s. So here's the clip, and I will see you on the other side to discuss.
A bit of a sensation.
What he wanted to do was to see them be a performer. It was so stark. That's all that he wanted to do.
Glitter started hanging around Soho, singing wherever and whenever he could, and hoping to be spotted. It worked, and this was his first single, released under the name Paul Raven.
Burning so bright, oh now I'm alone and lost in the night.
To be honest, it was awful, but the thing was, he had actually got into a recording studio and made a record, and this is what he always said he was going to do.
None of Glitter's early singles made much impact. He kept reinventing himself using different names, not just Paul Raven, but Paul Russell and Paul Monday. At one stage, he even tried being called Rubber Bucket. In 1965, he followed in the footsteps of the Beatles to Germany. There he fronted the Boston Show Band, formed by John Russell. Conditions were tough. They'd often have to perform in clubs right through the night, and to keep them going, they used drink and drugs.
There used to be a Toilettenfrau. There's a lady who used to look after the toilets and everything. She used to say, I've got...
Yeah. Oh, he's just so creepy. I'm sorry, but that hairpiece is just, it's got to go. I know nowadays, I think he actually just got arrested again because he was looking at stuff he shouldn't have been looking at. Anyways, we're going to look at Hamburg today, guys. And yeah, I did pull a little bit of information on Gary Glitter because there is a connection with Gary Glitter and the Beatles. Yeah, so I just find this really interesting, and I found a few different articles that kind of explain Hamburg's presence in the 1960s on the music scene. It's very fascinating to me, like, why that one city? And then I also found out that all of the bands that came over, you know, in the British invasion, came over to the States for a major success. They all went to those stages in Hamburg to hone in on their skills and become more cohesive musicians together, I guess, to perform in front of prostitutes and sailors and stuff like that. So yeah, it's funny to me. It's interesting. So sit back, relax, and we're going to go through a couple of articles that have some very interesting information on Hamburg in the 1960s. I will see you guys on the other side. All right, so we're going to read through some of this stuff, guys. I'm just going to read the stuff that I highlighted in these articles because that's the information that I find interesting. Okay, so this is just like a blog from February 10th, 2022, about a year ago. So the Beatles didn't understate the early contribution to their success of exceedingly long periods of time spent playing in seedy red light night spots in Hamburg and West Germany. John Lennon summed up the immeasurable values of the Hamburg gigs phase to the early Beatles' development, quipping to a journalist that though he was born in Liverpool, he grew up in Hamburg. Hamburg was really like our apprenticeship, learning how to play in front of people. So the Indra Club and the Kaiser Keller, these were both nightclubs that were owned by Bruno Koschmider, who was paying each of the 5 Beatles a princely sum of £2.50 a night to perform. What a cheat. The Kaiser Keller was also where the boys met Astrid, a Hamburg local who was to have a profound influence on the band's look. From Astrid, they got their signature mop-top style haircut. She was like their stylist. It's very cool. In Hamburg, the Beatles wore black leather boots and cowboy boots. Yes. Insert this picture. Bam. Anyways, so funny. The Astrid's Hamburg Art College student friends Klaus Vormann and Jorgen Vollmer also formed lasting associations with the Beatles from the Kaiser Keller days. The following year, while still contracted to Koschmider, the boys were enticed by Peter Eckhorn, Koschmider's Reeperbahn rival. He talked them into defecting to the Top 10 Club on the offer of better money and conditions. And then that's when Koschmider got really mad and he deported George for being underage. And then I guess Paul and Pete lit up a condom or something and it exploded. So Koschmider had them arrested and then they were deported. So John just followed suit back to Liverpool. It's just very... Oh, he got back at them, didn't he? Anyways, this is a new article from a website called RTE. Okay, Hamburg belongs to the ranks of the legendary rock and roll cities, mainly because of the 250 plus nights that the Beatles played between 1960 and 1962. Whoever wrote this article has really bad grammar and typos galore, so. Okay, other bands associated with what became known as the British invasion also honed their chops on the same stages, leading one writer to dub Hamburg as the cradle of British rock. Very interesting. Gloriously uninhibited spirit of Hamburg rock and roll threaded its way into punk in the 1970s and garage band revivals since the 80s. Its flag is flown by performers from Billie Eilish, not Billie Childish, to the White Stripes. Yes, the White Stripes are awesome. One of my favorites. What it is about what it was about Hamburg that gave it its particular affinity for rock and roll. What did this place mean in this particular place? Like, why did these Germans invest so much emotional energy in it, while in my own country, the United States, where we spawned the genre after all, we took it for granted? Understanding early rock and roll in Hamburg means exploring the neighborhood where the clubs were clustered. St. Pauli, a portside entertainment zone that was also home to one of the world's most notorious red light districts. Rock and roll gained a foothold there around 1960 due to a confluence of factors. Note the name of the neighborhood, guys. St. Paul. If that's not like foreshadowing, or I don't know, just very creepy to me. The economic miracle also put unprecedented levels of disposable income in the pockets of teenagers and young adults. Growing purchasing power and sheer numbers enhanced these baby boomers' identity as a distinct cohort that was more mobile, less bound to traditional social categories, and open to new sensations, particularly in the U.S. In late 1959, a St. Pauli entrepreneur named Bruno Koschmider sought to tap this new market by opening the Kaiserkeller, a dance palace for youth. But initially, his basement club attracted little notice, so Koschmider continued to search for a gimmick that would distinguish it in a crowded entertainment landscape. He found it in rock and roll, which by this time had been driven underground in West Germany after violence at a showing of Rock Around the Clock in Bill Haley's 1958 concerts. Wow. Bill Haley was like scandalous, guys, back then. That was like risque music to a lot of people when rock and roll came on the scene. It's very interesting. Koschmider's experience booking Dutch Indonesian show bands who also played rock instruments suggested there was an audience for this music. In 1960, he began importing British acts such as Tony Sheridan and the Silver Beatles. These young Brits came cheap, could sing the music in its native tongue, and brought a gut bucket quality that St. Pauli audiences appreciated. Soon, other entrepreneurs copied Koschmider's success, spawning a wave of new clubs, such as the Top 10 in the late 1960s and the Star Club in 1962. By the Beatlemania year of 1964, St. Pauli had an infrastructure of clubs, pubs, snack bars, and other businesses catering to the thousands who thronged there for what was now called beat music. Sounds like social engineering to me. Rock and roll succeeded in the early 1960s St. Pauli, in part because it was new. Beat clubs offered young people places to experience live music that had few German outlets then. While the Kaiserkeller's initial audience was an assortment of sailors and workers in the local sex industry who just wanted party music, they were soon joined by working-class Elvis enthusiasts and the bourgeoisie, bohemians. Those more dedicated fans could now connect with each other even if class barriers stubbornly persisted. Many also formed bonds with the musicians in the intimate spaces of the clubs. These interactions created a music scene with a distinct sound and style. The spaces of Hamburg's music scene had been sites of amusement of one kind or another since the 19th century. The Kaiserkeller stood on the same site as a bar where a Nazi-era swing youths jived to forbidden Ellington and Bozzy records. The Top 10 had once been a hippodrome where sailors on shore leave got drunk, rode draft animals. Okay. That makes me think of the movie Swing Kids, like when the Nazis took over and swing music had to be buried away, and these kids it was like a rave. It was a rave in 1930, 1940. It was very, very interesting. Okay, so let's move on. How original Beatles manager Alan Williams sparked rock's greatest myth. Alan Williams was the Beatles' first manager. The beta version of the future Beat Gods caught his eye sometime in late 1959 or 1960, when they first performed at the Jacaranda, a legendary Liverpool coffee bar run by Williams and his wife Beryl. In the first few months of the new decade, Williams helped the trembling and formative band, then comprised of Paul McCartney, John Lennon, and George Harrison, to become a more reliable gigging outfit by procuring them a steady drummer. They went through a couple dudes and they settled with Pete Best. He then turned them into professionals and gave them invaluable performance experience by booking them regularly in Liverpool and other venues in the north. Many accounts, most significantly by the exhaustively detailed work of Mark Lewison, present a picture of the formative 58 to 60 Beatles as amateurish, transient, and far from the charismatic and career-centric rock group that emerged by 1969, almost without a doubt. Very interesting there, guys. Williams was the missing piece, the catalyst who offered gigs, focus, and framework of professionalism to the fascinating but scattered dreams of John, Paul, George, and Stuart Sutcliffe, who had joined the Beatles in early 1960, not too long after Williams had hired him to paint murals at the Jacaranda. So, without Williams, we don't have the myth and the reality of Hamburg. But Hamburg, the reality that Williams made possible, is also an essential rock myth. Hamburg also stands for any place where a band paid its dues and learned its craft. Any place where boys or girls with guitars grunted and ground out rock and roll, any place where young musicians stood in the shadow of the myth of the leather Beatles and made a hoarse, lusty, raw teenage sound that was loud, beery, and constant, and twisted like an Italian cigar and streamlined like an airstream. Alan Williams gave us that myth. All right, guys, then we're going to go, very interesting, right? The myth. We're going to go through this article, just a couple of things. It's how did Gary Glitter get discovered? You know, who really fucking cares? But he has a very interesting connection here. So he began playing in bars when he was 16 and later moved on to more high-profile venues in his career as his career developed. Having recorded several ballads and rock and roll songs, he came to the attention of film producer Robert Hartford Davis, who encouraged him to record songs under Paul Raven. Okay. After a year, he was signed to a recording contract with Parlophone and hired a new management team. He collaborated with producer George Martin and released 2 singles, both commercial failures. Paul then decided to pursue a career in television advertisements. So, George Martin produced Gary Glitter under the name of Paul Raven. I just find that fascinating because I thought that George Martin was more into comedy and whatnot before the Beatles came along. So I find that very interesting, and I find it super interesting how that article that said that all the other bands who were to form the British invasion, how they all went over to Hamburg to hone in on their craft. You heard it, guys. hone in on their craft, develop their craft. Who speaks like that? The Masons, right? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I just really wanted to know about Hamburg, the city, and like, why was that the city where all of these bands from England just flocked to? You know, it's very peculiar. And then it makes me start thinking about all of the shit that we learned about the OTO and the Golden Dawn and the Fraternitas Saturni. You know, they're all out there in Germany as well. So, you know, there's nothing, I couldn't really go that deep. I couldn't find any sort of information that deep. But I'm sure there's some sort of indiscretion there. I don't know. It's just really strange. So anyways, guys, this was just kind of what I wanted to go over today. I find it fascinating, you know, it's like social engineering. They said that St. Pauli had an infrastructure of these bars and pubs and all these places where these little kids could go and watch beat music. And it's just, why? Why was that? Why was it? You know, I still didn't really get an answer. I did, but I didn't. I mean, basically they say that they went over there because the Brits were cheap and they could sing good rock and roll and sound, you know, in English. I don't think that that is quite the reason. I have a feeling that those secret societies have something to do with it. The Tavistock Institute, all of that. I think that Hamburg was a place for them to, hone in on their craft. Become programmed robots by playing for 8 hours straight. You know, that in itself is like torture. Like, what the hell, man? You have to have so much stamina to sit there and strum a guitar or, you know, hit away at the drums. And you're sitting there for 8 hours. Oh, geez, I just don't, It sounds like brainwashing techniques to me. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. I feel like Hamburg was a place connected to the German method, right? The German method that is told to us in the memoirs of Billy Shears. I did a video on it. Go check it out. The FS is in full effect, and I know they have something to do with these bands going over there, because when the British invasion hit American soil, forget it. The counterculture began at that moment, and that is when the tide began to shift, and we started getting new ideas. And like one of those articles said as well, that people were open to new experiences, you know, and yeah, man, free love, let's do it, you know, just like, oh man, they really did shift the culture, guys. And it's a trip. All of this stuff is connected somehow. I just wanted to learn a little bit more about Hamburg, and so I hope you guys learned something too. And if you're here with me till the very end, thank you so much. I love all of you, and thank you for taking your precious time out of your day to watch my video. So until next time, my lovelies, I will be doing a tarot reading. I will be doing a tarot reading on a very interesting celebrity. So keep a lookout for that, my lovelies. Other than that, I am done. Blessings to all of you, and I will see you another time. Bye, guys.